So, um, so let me go ahead and share the spreadsheet, the Google Doc with
I think
the
the action, or I guess where we left off, is we started talking about adding the signatories to the
right.
schema. Um,
Yes.
Hmm.
and we wanted to do that as a group.
Yes,
So I
that
put the
needs to
things
be
that
done.
were, yeah, so the items on orange at the bottom were missing. And then the question I was going to ask is, okay, for the affirmations, so line 62, should that really be part of a signatory? Like a signature or a signatory is going to make an affirmation. It shouldn't be at the top level of the declarations. I guess the question is like, as a signatory, what am I signing? Am I signing a statement? Am I signing the S-bomb? Am I signing a declaration? What is the piece that I'm signing?
Hmm.
Where is it now? Or is it not? We don't have anything around signatories in there.
We have it in the example, but we don't have it in the spec. So the samples that we had worked through, it just hadn't gotten incorporated.
Okay, let me bring that up then.
Yeah, let's look at the sample and maybe we can figure out what it's actually trying to say.
Exactly. Let's see. Let me share a different window. And let's see. IntelliJ. Didn't work. Come on. All right. All right. So let's see. Oops. That's right.
It may be
Annotation.
in 1.5, or unless it got merged over, but we had like an SSDF example. So maybe it might be under like attestations.
Yeah, let's see. Where was that? 1.5 work streams? No. Let's see. Um, yeah, let's see. Where's my branch on here? They changed the UI on this a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out where everything is. Um, branches. There was a 1.5 attestations.
Here's the link to, I think, the one that it was. We sent GitHub.
What's that? Oh, you sent it to
I
me?
put a link into where I believe it is.
Oh, here's the SSDF one. Okay. Okay, so we've got the affirmation here, and it is this a top level thing? So we got the declarations. Let's collapse that. Claims, evidence, targets, affirmation. Affirmation is a top level thing.
And you can
Right,
sign the affirmation and you can sign the whole thing.
Okay,
right.
so I might be off then. So there be more than one affirmation, or just a single, or is the
Well, you could the right now affirmation is a single thing, and then you can have multiple signatures of that affirmation. So like an affirmation might require like multiple signatures. Um, in which
is there
case,
ever I'm thinking maybe the reverse, where is there a need for multiple affirmations on
Like I
this?
certify that this was created on this date and somebody else says I certify that the information here is correct.
Hmm,
I don't
I
know.
see.
I haven't really seen that like real world stuff doesn't usually have that, right? Like two signatures for two different purposes. Maybe in the digital world it makes more sense, but
I've never seen it in the paper world.
right,
I mean,
that's what I'm
think
saying.
think of the times where you buy a house or you open a new business or you do your taxes. um,
Yeah, you're usually signing for the whole thing, like one thing for the whole thing.
Okay.
But S-bombs are a little different, actually, you know. They're
yeah.
a lot of different kinds of information in one doc.
The reason it
Um,
pushes me towards maybe having multiple is we have multiple standards, right? And we have one affirmation that would then cover multiple standards.
Hmm.
well, you're not affirming to the standards, you're affirming to the attestations.
Even so, I guess.
Mhm.
I guess where you just, yeah, I guess that'd be the question, right? Is that what are you affirming?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make any sense to affirm to the standards. It does make sense to affirm to the attestations, claims, and evidence, right? That whole group of stuff.
Okay.
Um, Now, in a digital world, like a paper world, I mean, it's piece of paper is two-dimensional. Um, you don't have multiple purposes for signatures. But in a digital world, what use cases could we unlock if we actually had that capability?
Well, Ian brings up a good point about, you know, there's multiple roles involved with creating one of these things
Hmm.
across multiple standards that there are attestations about. Do we support a way of, I guess there's really no way of signing, like having some chunk of this. Sorry, that wasn't very clear. What if I wanted to say like, hey, I'm compliant with OpenSAM and ASVS.
No, that would be in your attestations. Your attestations
And
would say that.
and then
And then you'd have,
who would sign what parts of it?
well, your affirmation, I'm thinking about like SSDF, for example. The CEO would theoretically sign that, affirming to, hey, I certify to the best of my knowledge that all this information is correct. Um, the SSDF form from CISA has, I think, one signature on it, right?
Yeah. CEO or delegate.
Right, exactly.
But if we're not able to think of a concrete example, I think leaving it as is makes sense.
Let's just keep an eye on it. And if like maybe that's something we can ask the community about
Hmm.
and get feedback on version 1. And if there's a need, we can add it.
Okay.
I'm
Let's see
thinking
the next.
about I'm thinking about like a separation of duties type of thing, um, Jeff,
Yeah.
where it actually takes multiple parties um, to actually declare something. Um, No, you could have different roles already for the signature. That would support that use case, but in a separation of duties type of way, it's really a single affirmation. Now, in a separation of duties thing, would you actually need multiple things to affirm to?
I feel like if there was such a require a thing, it would require like a duplicate of this whole declaration section, right? Like you
Mm,
sign that whole thing and say like, I'm the fire inspector. I inspected all that stuff for fire safety, and you sign it, and that's cool. And then somebody else would say like, oh, well, I looked at the structural plan and like I sign off on that piece. But at the end of the day, I think like it's all about one piece of software, right? Like this is Microsoft Word or I don't know,
mhm.
Salesforce.com or whatever it is. You're signing, you're affirming about that. It's got it's one big chunk of thing, and you're saying I've checked against all these standards, and it feels like that should be one signature.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of conflating like the role of assessors and what their claims are going to be
Yeah,
as part of affirmation, and it's
But it's
not.
not. It's not. Yeah.
but that
My
that's what
mental
we need
model
really
was a little
clear in that
wrong.
spreadsheet, right? We need a really good definition of what
Yeah,
the affirmation is all about.
exactly. Words matter. Um, okay, so we're missing the signatories. So I have not added that to the 1.6 spec, so I will do that. Did we go through, I know like last time we went through some items in red on the spreadsheet. Did we get through all of those or no?
I
I think
thought
the only one we didn't talk to was the evidence versus evidences. I don't. I think that's
What?
otherwise.
What is it? Evidence versus evidences?
I think that was otherwise.
I got through 4 years of Georgetown law, and nobody ever said evidences.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're the expert. I barely passed English, so.
Yeah.
Chemistry also was low on my priorities when I was studying. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that one's did we want to revisit some of the let's actually let me share that document again. Um and see if we can go through and get agreement on these definitions.
I'll say the definitions are pretty terrible. I think a lot of what Jeff was saying, where you don't want to use the word that you're describing in a sentence, I promptly did that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I know I've written a few specifications. It's hard.
This is a
Yeah.
blameless culture.
What's that?
It's blameless culture. I don't like. There's no blame, no fault.
I think something I guess I was seeking guidance on, Steve, when I started thinking about this is like looking at what currently is in the spec. They tend to be very like short sentences. Is there like a maybe not a standard, that's the right word. Maybe there's a recommended length for some of these descriptions. How verbose can we be?
You can be as verbose as you want. So what we do, like for example, I'll give you an example. So the descriptions, especially for like the JSON schema that we do, like if we look at component type, right? This whole thing actually fits in the description field for type. And we actually use
Okay.
Markdown itself in the description so that it renders like this. That way, when we are producing HTML documentation, or if in the future we want to create like PDF documentation, the overall formatting of what it is that we want, like bullet points and links, that'll all be maintained. So that's a really long description, right? It's a multi-line markdown type of thing. So if we want to do that, that's perfectly viable.
Okay.
I think here, especially for this kind of standard where it's not like super technical stuff, like a lot of these things are kind of, you know, more human world process oriented, that we should make relatively detailed descriptions.
Sure. Yeah. The one thing that one behavior that I started doing when creating some of the CycloneDX descriptions, it's not consistent because I didn't start off doing it this, but I one, I looked at Wikipedia, and two, I looked at the Cambridge dictionary. So the Oxford one is not overly. Um, I think the Cambridge one has a lot more examples. Let's put it that way. It's a lot more real world type of thing. So I've been looking at the Cambridge dictionary, and I've been looking at Wikipedia for a lot of different things, and trying to come up with essentially descriptions of like what a standard is, or what does it mean by having a standard? What does it mean to have a requirement for that standard, right? Because to us, it's obvious. To somebody who is maybe a business user of this particular thing, which is
Right.
interesting, right? Because a bill of material, it's mostly going to be tech and security people. But for this, we're reaching a very, potentially a very different audience. So I think it's very important that we come up with very clear descriptions on what it is that we want.
So I see a bunch of things in this that say like declarations, a list of declarations. And that would be fine if we define declarations somewhere, but I don't think we have a thing called a declaration, right? It's just an array of all this other stuff.
It is declarations is an object that contains a bunch of other objects, right?
So I think
A
we should define what a declaration is. Like we could say a list of declarations. A declaration is, you know, and just describe what it's intended to be. It's a
right.
standard plus some attestations and claims and how that works together, so that people know, like when I declare something, this is what it means.
What else do we have in there?
Well, I'm just trying to articulate it in English. Like a declaration is some standards, some claims against those standards, some attestations that those claims are met. Is that right? Because the evidence is.
Hmm.
You could say like a list of declarations. Each declaration includes or is intended to do XYZ or something. Wish I need the I gotta pull up the spec. These declarations are doing a lot of work. It's kind of everything.
we want to say something along the lines of a declaration is something that a singular assertion will be made on, or
Well, the standards and requirements are not assertions, but everything else kind of is, right?
but I'd say it's the bucket that you are making an assertion on. It's like the bucket of things that should be standalone.
Right.
Why are standards inside the declarations?
Because you have to define the standards somewhere.
Yeah, but you could use claims, right?
Now, claims are in support of attestations.
All right. But
Now, one thing that one thing that we're kind of leaning toward with like a CycloneDX 2.0 model is eventually getting to it'll be a new top level element. So this is post 1.7, right? Right now we're working on 1.6. Next year 1.7, and that's all the blueprint stuff, Jeff. But we're also thinking about 2.0. And the one thing that we're toying with is the idea of having a new top level element called definitions. And a definition would just be kind of this just reusable object.
yeah,
And you could define standards, for example. And maybe now is like the time to starting thinking about doing that, because we can define the standards and requirements, and the declarations could be separate, and then
yeah,
link back to those.
yeah. I find it a little confusing to have the standards. So standard articulates inside the standard somewhere. There's a requirement. It's basically it's a lot like a claim, right?
I don't understand. I mean, it doesn't have all the stuff of a claim.
No, that's right. But it's like I meant the predicate part of the claim, right? Like,
So one thing that we would have to do, Ian, is we would have to revisit all the things that we've actually put in a machine readable thing, like the BSIM, the SSDF, all those things. If we changed it, if we moved it out of declarations, which is fine, we can do. We would have to revisit all that work that we
Yeah.
previously did.
I think the other thing that we'd want to do then is also add, no, I guess we'd be okay. I guess where would and maybe you'd be in that affirmation, but how would you say, like, yes, I affirm that this set of claims and these attestations wholly meet a standard. To me, that's what the affirmation is.
Yeah.
So I think there's some linkage there that we would want to add into affirmation.
Oh, right,
say,
because
like,
it's within the
this is
declaration itself, isn't it?
correct.
I see. Yeah.
So provide a list of standard bomb refs that you were making affirmations about.
Right, right, right. Yes, 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 yes.
Or maybe it would
Right.
be, I don't know. We'd have to provide the context of what is being affirmed.
Yeah. If we move that out of declarations, for example, then yeah, we miss that linkage. We'd have to have something else to link it. And quite honestly, we would have to start doing it for everything. There's a lot to revisit here. We'd have to do it for targets.
Target would just be something you define.
That's true. Yeah, targets could actually move into the definitions thing. Evidence, let's see. Bomb ref. So that's fine. Claims, bomb ref, that's fine. Mitigation strategy, that's a bomb ref. Evidence, that's a bomb ref. That's a bomb ref. Attestations, that's a bomb ref. Bomb ref. Bomb ref. Yeah, okay. Okay, okay. Yeah, I think the only thing that we would have to change, Ian, is the affirmation if we moved the standards out of the declaration into a definition.
Yeah, and I think Jeff's point is well taken, that
Yeah,
well, standards are not declarations.
no, they're not.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay. So then if that's the case, then
What is a declaration? Or it's just,
it's a grouping of all these all these things. So it's a grouping. One declaration contains one or more standards, the assessor, all the attestations, all the claims, all the evidence,
yeah.
all that, and the affirmation.
So it's, when I say it's a declaration, it's like, here's how I'm compliant with SSDF.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing we need in the definition, is just like a high level, this is how organizations can capture their, I don't want to say compliance, but how they've met each of the requirements in a particular standard.
Conformance. Yeah.
Yeah, how they conform to a particular standard. Or
And I
their own
think
set of claims and evidence.
so I think the part that we then have to figure out is, like, to your point, Jeff, like a declaration is saying you are doing something to a standard. So what's the linkage to a standard? So maybe instead of having the standards directly included, maybe that standards is a list of bomb refs to the standards at a higher level within a declaration. Maybe it doesn't need to be under the affirmation object.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we got off track. We were trying to just define what a declaration is, and like all of a sudden we're asking questions about like, well, what is it? Which I guess is a conversation we should have. But I like, if we just say a declaration is the way, it's a group of it's the way that you assert that that you affirm that you're meet a certain set of requirements. I don't know. We could come up with a good definition for that, I think.
Is this good enough, or do we need something more concrete?
Sorry, let me look at what you got there now.
I think it's just that second sentence. Each declaration may include standards and associated requirements. Kind of implies that.
think you dropped the include.
Yeah.
Attestations. Yeah. Yeah.
So do we have an action item then? Are we are we now thinking about moving standards, which then includes the requirements to another object called definitions?
That'd be my vote. I think it's a good point that Jeff made.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm getting lost in the sauce here a little bit. Like, I'm not declaring the standard, right? Like, I'm declaring that I'm conformant with the standard.
Depending on your point of view, right?
That's the
I
thing is
mean,
that you
if
might
you're
be,
PCI council, you might be declaring a standard,
yeah.
or you could be defining the
I like that people talk about defining a standard. But I declare how I'm conformant with that standard.
right?
I don't know. I think it'll be slightly better that way.
Slightly better as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it a little bit easier to just have some kind of bomb ref to an external standard. It'll make it a
Right.
little clear.
Yeah, we'll have that as well. The only thing that we'll have to revisit is the attestations themselves. So Ian will have to revisit the work that we did for generating the standards, and we'll just have to change. We'll change declarations to definitions, and definitions will be an array. An array of, well, will it be an array? No, it'll be an object of components, services, standards, etc. Anything that we want to,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's better as an array. And the reason would be if we start looking at like bomb merging. So if you have multiple organizations in your supply chain and they're giving you a bomb and you're trying to create an overall bomb.
Okay.
I do have the counterpoint kind of speaks
Merging
to
is
what you were
hard,
saying.
isn't it?
Oh yeah. We submitted
Especially deduplication and all that sort of thing.
we put a lot of energy into that. We should probably get some presentations out there. But that's that. I'm going to go back to the counterpoint of why standards might be good as declarations. To your point, Steve, is there a need for the standards bodies to affirm that the standard that they are releasing is whatever? Is there? I guess what I'm saying is that
I don't
you
think
can put a
so.
standard out there, you can sign it, but how do you say this is the official standard for blank? Is there ever a need for that?
Well, I think the combination of the manufacturer, which is still a misspelling, the combination of that and the digital signature applied to it, that's really all you really need to verify the authenticity of a given standard, right? To make sure that it's authentic. It's from PCI Council, it's from BSIM or whatever. Jeff, is there a use case for affirming to a standard?
Or affirming the release of a
I
standard?
think it's
I
just like,
I can see the affirmation of a release, right? Especially if you have a technical committee and you have a vote and that sort of thing. But that's a use case that we didn't plan on capturing. Now, if that's something we want to capture, that's fine. But I think each standards body kind of does that their own way.
yeah, I think if it's signed by the standards body, then that's an official one.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, IETF does it different than W3C, which does it different than ECMA, which does it different than ISO.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to detract from that.
No. I mean, it's a good question to ask. Makes us think.
So
But
I'll take an action to.
point taken on making definitions an array. I will do that. Merging is the use case for that. Completely agree. Okay.
I don't know if it totally solves that problem. Like you could still end up with conflicting standards and stuff inside there. Like it,
You could if they
what
had
does
the
the standard
same
mean
bomb
if you have
ref.
like, it says I've got 3 different versions of the same standard in one attestation? I guess you could meet all the requirements for even for earlier versions of the standard. I was just thinking about the merging problem because you said it was complicated and it is. I'm not sure that like just making
Like an
everything in an
array.
array so you can shove it all into one document doesn't really solve the merge problem.
Actually, you're right. Because the bomb ref is unique to the bomb. Doesn't matter if it's in a different part of the bomb.
I think
Um,
the Ray comment was more on the declarations where there may be different entities who are doing affirmation to a standard. So I may, like my company, my entity, my employer may require our suppliers to do affirmation.
Yeah.
And then I try to merge, the container image, the application, all this together into one thing. Sure, maybe bomb refs are the correct way to do that. External, sorry, not bomb ref, but external refs, bomb type it's a better way to do that.
So you just have a stack of bombs with like references.
Correct. Yeah, or you'd have yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think the thing that we have done internally is we look at like the tree structure of bombs where bombs have external refs.
Yeah.
But then at some point we say we want to flatten everything so we can do like easier analysis on it. And that flattening
Right.
is what I would be concerned about.
Steve, what's your take on that? Like, I'm curious because we've got some customers that have pretty complicated supply chains, and they're wrestling with this. Like, do I combine them all into one thing, or do I maintain a tree structure, or do I just parse them all into some database and the bomb is just the communications format to get the data in there?
right. Normally, what we recommend, and it's actually documented in the SBOM guide that we have, but there's two kind of complementary, not complementary. There's two I don't want to say competing, but there's two different ways to kind of represent like a complex like system of system type of thing. We have component assemblies, which are kind of nested components, right? So a component may include other components, like for example, a dashboard contains an instrument cluster, which then contains a speedometer, which might contain plexiglass and LEDs and capacitors and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So you can go down kind of a nested thing like that, or you can use, and the good thing about doing that is that you can independently sign each part of that tree structure, right? So if you only want to sign a part of the bomb, like one particular assembly, like the instrument cluster assembly, you can independently sign the instrument cluster assembly, and then a different manufacturer could actually digitally sign the maybe the dashboard itself, which then contains that instrument panel assembly, right? So that's a really powerful use case. But then you can also externalize these things too. So like maybe you represent maybe you have that dashboard thing, and the dashboard thing then links out to an external bill of material that describes the inventory that's in that dashboard. That's actually the way that NTIA, the framing group within NTIA, actually recommends that approach. It's overly complicated. I don't like that approach. It makes parsing and delivery of SBOMs a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
But you also don't have the complexities of merging and stuff like that. one thing that is fairly simple to do is like if you have like a polyglot type of thing where maybe your front end is, I don't know, JavaScript, your back end is Go. Um, you know, you can, and it's distributed as one application, right? You can create both of these things from both of your different build system and you can kind of merge them together at the end. The problem comes down when you actually have a multi-module thing that isn't Maven, because Maven works, but
Right,
multi-module things in build systems that aren't actually multi-module. That's complicated. So like if you have like multiple Go modules and they're all part of the same application, that becomes complicated because it's not multi-module. So it's a
right.
limitation of the build tools, and then how you get around those limitations using CycloneDX. I would advocate for the assembly mechanism method because it's just easier in my opinion, because everything's kind of in one nice neat place rather than having to figure out how to resolve all your external bills and materials.
Yeah,
I put it in the chat, but we do that. We actually resolve all those, find all of those materials and merge them in, and we'll actually like traverse the full tree of URIs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because it was just too hard for us to figure out how to do analysis and like make sure we catch everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is kind of one of those things where the academic exercises that we went through with NTIA don't actually match the reality of what's actually doable on the ground, right? Yeah, for sure. Um, okay, I know we're at time. This week I will work on updating the schema so that we have a new definitions object, I think. A definitions object.
yeah.
I will move the standards to that object, and then try to work on um, the OWASP standards that we've already kind of got in there, and I think the BSIM standard as well, because those will have to be modified. And then if the group wants to kind of revisit some of these definitions between now and next week, that would be useful because we spent a lot of time talking about one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to go through. So how many's in this list? 68. So, but I think we made some progress, and I think that moving the standards out makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ian.
All right, good deal.
All right. Well, take care. I'll
Later.
I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.
Yeah.
Have a good one.